Well, it is not where we want to kick things off on a Monday morning on KCMO Talk Radio, but unfortunately, tragedy has struck Kansas City's first responders family this weekend with the loss and the death of one of Kansas City's own firefighters. In an absolute tragedy that once again in Kansas City, we have to talk about this from the standpoint of something being entirely avoidable. But unfortunately, that's not where we find ourselves today. 6:05, it is always good to be here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. When I think about this story around Graham Hoffman, 29-year-old Kansas City, Missouri firefighter who was killed over the weekend after they picked up a woman up in the Northland who had a wound on her finger. She ended up stabbing Graham Hoffman in the chest, and he later died at the hospital. This is somebody who had absolutely no business wandering the streets of the Northland. Why this individual was wandering the streets of the Northland is not clear at this point. But this person was only a couple of days removed from a couple of alleged felonies. Second-degree assault and resisting arrest. This was on April 23rd, 4 days before this same person murdered a Kansas City, Missouri Fire Department employee. 4 days prior, this person was biting a cop. That's right. This person was biting a Kansas City, Missouri police officer 4 days before she stabbed a Kansas City, Missouri firefighter in the chest. And this was all up in Clay County. So I know, trust me, we've talked plenty about the issues that have persisted in Jackson County. Hopefully the tide is shifting there under a new prosecutor. But this is all stuff in the Northland. This is all the judges and the prosecutors up in Clay County. You can't point to any of the issues south of the river right now and say, well, this is the same old, same old. It's not. It's all Clay County. That's where all of this has happened with this specific individual who is now facing a $1 million bond. And thank goodness for that. Unfortunately, it is too little, too late. Shanita Bossell, 38 years old, of Kansas City, has been charged for first-degree murder and armed criminal action as a result. But here's the problem. This person had been accused of a couple of felonies just a few days earlier. And what was the bond for that? $10,000. $10,000. That means you come up with $1,000 and you're back out on the streets. You're wandering the streets, and then you're getting picked up by the Kansas City, Missouri Fire Department, and you're allegedly, I guess I need to throw that word out there, stabbing a firefighter in the chest and killing him after 3 years on the job at 29 years old. That's what you're then allegedly doing. The broader story here, too, is what's going on in the Northland. The Northland has had a very dangerous and violent year so far. You look at the numbers up in the Northland, I was shocked. So right now in Kansas City, Missouri as a whole, we've got 46 homicides year to date. That means January 1st through yesterday, April 27th. That is up from last year at this point when we had 43. It's down from 2023 when we had 54 at this point in time. That was a record-setting year for homicides in Kansas City, Missouri. But look at these numbers. In North Patrol and Shoal Creek, those are the two patrol divisions up north of the river. You have had 13 homicides this year. Last year at this point, between both of those patrol divisions, North Patrol and Shoal Creek, you had a total at this point in the year of 3. 3 total between North Patrol and Shoal Creek. So far this year, you have 400% with 13 homicides between those two divisions up in the Northland. The Northland has had a really dangerous year. Interestingly, East Patrol, typically what you would say is the most violent part of Kansas City, is down. From last year, they were at 19. Now they're at 15. 2 years ago, they were at 21. Now they're at 15. 3 years ago, they were at 23 at this point. Now they're at 15. East Patrol has seen a downward trend in homicides. That's a good thing. We want to see that happen all over the city, obviously, but not at the expense of other parts of Kansas City. And part of the problem when you don't have enough cops patrolling, and we haven't had that in years now in this town, and it obviously got much worse over the last couple of years. What does that mean? Well, guess what? I hate to say it to you, but in the Northland, you don't have the police driving around that you need to have them. You just don't have those folks right now. You don't have the bodies. And I get it. They're staying in the more violent parts of Kansas City. But guess what? That leaves people out there in places like the Northland who want to do bad things, who are out there and realizing, hey, up here in the Northland, there ain't any cops around here. It's a zero-sum game. If you do not have enough police officers, somebody has to suffer. Somebody is not going to get the patrol that they need. And right now, it's very clear that's what's happening up north. Zach Thompson is the Clay County prosecutor, and we've invited him on the show today. We have not heard from him. Here's what he said yesterday.
Our office will use all legal, moral, and ethical tools at our disposal to ensure justice for Graham, his family, and our entire community.
All right. Great. Too little, too late. You know, I don't have, we're still trying to get all the details on how this same woman tries to, take a chunk out of the arm of a cop a few days earlier, is out on a $10,000 bail, and then ends up stabbing a firefighter in the chest over the weekend. Is that the judge? Is that the prosecutor's office? Who is it? We're still trying to get a handle on all that. But that was Zach Thompson. And listen, he's a good prosecutor up there in Clay County. Has been for a long time. But if it comes back to the prosecutor's office for why this woman was roaming the streets days after biting a cop on a very low bond with a couple of felonies, it's not going to sit well with a lot of people up north, and it shouldn't sit well with people up north. 913-408-7957. That's how you join us on a Monday morning. Let's go to Kansas City. Stephen, good morning. You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. I've been watching the coverage of this. I'm kind of interested to see how they're going to play this out of the young man working overtime to protect his community. Channel 9, the station that most people watch in this city, didn't even report anything about this woman's criminal record. So I would think this is a tailor-made death penalty case. I would definitely put her up for the needle. I think they've only executed one or two women in history, but I would say unquestionably this thing is on tape. This is an easy. The prosecutor looked PO'd yesterday. I would have no qualms about putting her up and giving her the needle. We need to put a stop to this. I mean, she'll probably plead mental insanity or something, but it would just make me feel a lot better to give her the death penalty just straight away. I mean, this is ridiculous. We can't let this New York style justice prosper here. She probably got through the cracks. No one's paying attention to a junkie, or whatever she is, who requested the ambulance, and then she kills a fine young man. So I'm amazed that no one wants to report her background. She tried to take a chunk out of a police officer's arm and would not let go. It's just beyond words. I mean, I don't know how this could happen. I mean, I know mistakes happen, but she's going to pay. She's going to pay for this big time.
Yeah, we'll see what Zach Thompson has lined up. Thank you there, Stephen. I appreciate it. Back in early April, she was involved in a hit and run, charged with leaving the scene of an accident. And then, of course, middle of last week, she's arrested for second-degree assault, resisting arrest, a couple of felonies, granted bail, bonded out on $425, so that's late last week. And within 48 hours of that, she is killing a Kansas City, Missouri firefighter, allegedly. That is such a failure of the system. It is hard to comprehend. And for all the grief that we have given to the prosecutor's office and the people in charge south of the river, not going to hold back if it turns out that the folks north of the river, whether it's unnamed judges or failures in the prosecutor's office, doing the same exact thing. What does it take to have somebody on a bond bigger than 10 grand? I mean, trying to take a chunk out of a cop's arm, as Steven said there, that's not enough. What, if it had been the leg, would that have gotten the bail up to $100,000? $10,000? My goodness. You got to be kidding me. 913-408-7957. We will have a lot more on this throughout the morning and get to you here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. It was a very busy weekend overseas as well. We'll tell you what happened and the highlights from that here coming up on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Well, the top story that we are monitoring here in Kansas City, sadly, is the death of Kansas City, Missouri firefighter Graham Hoffman. He was killed after the fire department picked up a woman on a welfare check who was seen walking along westbound 152 highway. And she's being treated for a laceration in her finger. This is days after she was arrested for biting a Kansas City, Missouri police officer, and she ends up allegedly stabbing Hoffman in the chest, and he dies at the hospital later in the day. This was over the weekend up in the Northland and obviously getting a lot of attention. Dave is on KCMO. Go ahead, Dave. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. My point is Zach Thompson, the prosecutor, he was going after the man who shot Ralph Yarl, the old veteran who was in his 80s, and he wanted 5 years for him, even though Ralph's DNA was on the door handle. And that would have been a death penalty for the man who shot Ralph Yarl. Maybe he did a very poor job of defending his house, but that would have been a death penalty. But this case, the woman knew they weren't going to hurt her. They were there to help, and she stabbed him. She actually killed him. She didn't just wound someone a little bit or graze him. She actually killed someone. So I'd like to see if Zach Thompson actually prosecutes her. I don't know if he's a Democrat or Republican, but I think that's going to make the difference whether the lady really gets the death penalty or not.
Yeah, we'll see. Shanita Bossell, is being charged with first-degree murder, armed criminal action, assault, resisting arrest, and is right now on a $1 million bond. So I'm hopeful we'll hear more from Thompson early in the week, but at least so far, there's not much more you can charge her with at this point.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it, Dave. 913-408-7957. I don't think the question is going to be how the prosecutor's office handles this now. Okay? But the question is going to be, like many things, when you talk about crime in Kansas City, was it preventable? Usually, it ties into lack of prosecution, lack of jail space, everything else south of the river. Nothing about this is a south of the river issue. Her legal matter from last week involving biting a cop was also in Clay County. And she was back out on the streets in a day or two after, a $10,000 bond, which is what, $1,000 in cash? So that's where the problem lies. And if it ties into issues up in Clay, well, we're going to address it because Clay County has seen a massive increase in violent crime so far this year. And that's where we knew these problems were not going to be exclusive to south of the river. They were going to spread. There were going to be, issues elsewhere. And sadly, now you're seeing that backed up with some of these numbers. Now, over the weekend, on a national news front, of course, the president found himself overseas for the Pope's funeral. And you look at how President Trump has been conducting himself. First off, if you didn't see the photos of Trump meeting with Zelensky over the weekend, very powerful. And Trump is wisely losing his patience with Putin. Trump obviously had a lot of beef with Zelensky, but I think it was more so with the rest of the world than it was actually Zelensky. I think it was more of like a, hey, Europe, you've really got to step to the plate here. You guys are so weak-kneed, and this obviously has much more of a direct impact on you than it does us. So you guys got to step to the plate there in Europe. I don't think it was all that personal with Zelensky. But then Zelensky shows up in the Oval Office, and he's getting into a back and forth with Trump and Vance. And Trump, being the old school guy that he is like, wait, hold on a second. You're not going to come into my house, insult me like this, when this country has done so much for you over the last 3 years. And that's where, of course, Trump and Vance lost it. But in the end, Trump understands that Putin's a really bad guy. And when Putin is bombing Ukraine last week, when they're supposed to be figuring out the final details of a ceasefire, Trump knows that this guy may ultimately not want peace. And when he got back yesterday from his trip after some of these photos that appeared with him and Zelensky talking one-on-one about where that war stands currently, Trump didn't sound like a guy to me that was all that sympathetic to anything that Putin was doing, and that's obviously the right approach. Here he was yesterday.
Well, I wanted to stop shooting, sit down, and sign a deal. We have the confines of a deal, I believe, and I wanted to sign it and be done with it and just go back to life.
Trump's just, literally, there's nothing political about what he's trying to do with this whole deal. I know some people want to just give Ukraine a blank check. That's not realistic. That's just not something that the United States should be in the business of doing. Helping them to a point, absolutely. But giving them a blank check and saying, you know what, just keep fighting until basically you're out of men, what good does that do anybody? So Trump has worked over these last about 100 days trying to find a suitable off-ramp for everybody and allow the war to end, allow the killings to end, and allow both sides to more or less save face. You might argue Zelensky's dug in a little bit too much, and he's doing it with other people's monies, but he is the one who got attacked here in all this, too. And Putin is undoubtedly one of the worst actors on the planet and one of the worst actors in, modern world history. So there's that factor as well. All of that is absolutely true. So now you say, well, what does Trump do here? Trump is realizing, I think, that Putin is not negotiating in good faith. So this is a very tenuous spot in this war because Trump has given Putin, whether you agree or not, some of the benefit of the doubt here. But he's clearly losing his patience, and he has every right to be losing his patience. So does he go after the oil in Russia? Does he try to cut off that oil to the rest of the world? And then basically after that, they would go belly up financially? Does he try to freeze assets in these banks? Those are the things that may be on the table for Trump at this point.
Well, I kind of think that Trump thinks he can deal with Putin, and now that he's pissing him off, so to speak, there may be bigger trouble.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
If you tried Trump's patience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He may regret that road. No doubt about it. The 6 at 6 is coming up in 15 minutes next. Speaking of Trump, why is Kansas City suing him? We'll tell you next. Little Friday news dump from the mayor's office in Kansas City. And I'm like, of course they waited till a Friday to dump this news. That Kansas City was suing the Trump administration after cuts to public health grants back in March, which they say has disrupted local efforts to boost infectious disease testing and promote vaccination. Yeah. The city, along with 4 other local governments across the country and a labor union, filed a lawsuit in federal court in Washington, D.C. against Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the agency that he leads. Kansas City and other plaintiffs contend the grant termination caused immediate and ongoing harm. The loss of the funding threatens their ability to protect the health of residents and make them vulnerable to immediate public health threats like the ongoing measles outbreak across the country, including in southwest Kansas. Yep, that's what they're going after. That's how they're tying this all together.
Where the measles came from.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Open border, anyone? Hello?
Who knows?
Grandpa?
Come on, man.
Anyone heard from him? Boy, I mean, you want to flood the country with 20 million people, and you don't care one bit about infectious diseases until the other guy's in office, just so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I was wondering.
I mean, think about how disingenuous that is. You did not hear a single Democrat fear anything on the infectious disease front when 20 million people over 4 years come across the border. No idea on their vaccination status, their background, or anything. Now Trump's in office, and it's like, we got 8 people with the measles in Dodge City. Woo, we're screwed here in Kansas City.
It's funny that you said think about it. It occurs to me immediately. But unfortunately, you do have to tell some people to think about it.
You do.
Yeah.
No, I know. You
Right.
got to throw it out there, man. You do. You got to throw it out there. Mayor Lucas said in a statement here, at a time when measles threatens our young people and Kansas Cityans in need of life-saving cures. Sorry, I'm trying to read this with a straight face. Come on, Mr. Mayor. You're killing me here. See federal research funding slashed. I believe it's important that we as cities and people stand up for common sense and public health in the courts. He says, I'm proud to join other mayors and cities who will continue working to save lives in Kansas City and around the country while the federal government plays politics. Okay.
Didn't think of it himself, though.
No.
Oh, I'll get on the list here.
Yeah.
Listen, let me just say that Kamala's quote that we have outside our door applies to what he's saying. I mean, the time to do this was every day when she said that a long time ago, right?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, we do what we do every day, and now's that time.
Correct.
Well, suddenly we wake up when Trump's in office.
From January 1st, and this is the latest data I could find from the World Health Organization, January 1st to March 20th, 17 states had reported a total of 378 cases of measles, including 2 deaths. The first deaths related to measles in the United States in a decade. So 2 deaths over nearly 3 months out of 378 cases of the measles in this country. Once again, that's not Kansas City. That's in the nation. Well, 2 deaths, I mean, that's over the weekend at 12th and Belmont. That's what that is. I mean, Kansas City had multiple homicides over the weekend. And now we're suing the administration over alleged cuts by RFK Jr. to Health and Human Services because of measles cases in Garden City and Dodge City, Kansas, 6 hours away, while we've got homicides all over the place over the weekend, from a Kansas City firefighter to a couple of guys found in their car at, 12th and Belmont.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to talk about
Those are
political
teenagers.
priorities, you have got to be kidding me. That's what this is. Political narrative, political priorities. That's the name of the game. Maybe what happened is this. Maybe last week on NFL Draft Day on Thursday, when we did our Republican and Democrat draft for our top 3 for 2028, and Mark picked Quentin Lucas at number 2 in the draft, maybe it got to his head, and he figured, I got to get some type of national exposure here, and this may be the way to do it. So we might have to blame you for this whole thing, Mark.
I apologize for that, but I bet he did listen to it because I saw you posted it on social media.
Oh, yeah. I mean, from what I can tell, it got a lot of traction over the weekend. We got a lot of emails and a lot of social media feedback on that segment where we picked the top 3 in honor of the NFL draft for 2028. On the Republican side, John picked J.D. Vance with the number 1 pick.
No brainer.
Mark picked, yes, that is the obvious number 1 pick. You're right about that. That's like Peyton Manning back in the day.
I couldn't New York Jets or Chicago Bears that if I tried.
No,
right?
you couldn't. You couldn't put Jamarcus Russell that one. No way, no how. Mark picked Sarah Huckabee Sanders, a great pick at 2. That was going to be my pick at 3, and then I went Marco Rubio at 3. And then on the Democrat side, John had the number 1 pick. He went Gavin Newsom. Mark went Quentin Lucas at number 2.
I may have Mitchell Trubisky that.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
I did have him at 3 myself.
And then I went Josh Shapiro, the Pennsylvania governor, at 3. And then a day later, we find out that Quentin Lucas is suing RFK. Now, listen, for his own political purposes,
Exactly.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
It gives him some juice. Like, if you're looking for attention as a Democrat mayor in a deep red state with no obvious political path right now, this is one of the ways to get some attention and do it So I get the politics of it. But, I mean, then you actually think about it beyond just the surface area, and you're like, what's the point? This is ridiculous. What are we doing here?
More to the point, he can't not sign it.
Yeah.
If he has aspirations, right? If he's not on the list, you got to be part of the group, man.
That's a good point. It's like, where were you on that lawsuit back in 25?
Yeah. If you've got aspirations, you better be there.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. On the text line, Pete, the garbage and decay all over town is far more dangerous than the potential measles threat when it comes to the health of this community. That's a very good point on the text line. Nice job. 913-408-7957.
Well, they took over animal control, so that should be magically cleared up, too.
That's right. Don't forget that. You're absolutely right. Pete, can we talk about the Kansas City administration and their wasting monies for this lawsuit? I don't know what exactly it's going to cost. I'm sure it's something that's being handled by activists in other municipalities. That would be my guess, because I really think that they're just kind of latching onto this lawsuit as far as I can tell.
Well, we know Andrew Bailey's problems in getting records on how much is being spent on lawsuits, so I wouldn't hold my breath on this one coming up.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. 913-408-7957. The mayor saying in his statement, I'm proud to join other mayors and cities who will continue working to save lives in Kansas City and around the country while the federal government plays politics. Oh, stop. Stop. The federal government's playing politics here. The lawsuit is one big political play. Come on. I mean, We've got to cut the $36 trillion in debt and the $2 trillion deficit. Part of the way to do that is to go through every single department in D.C., including the Pentagon, okay? I am including the Pentagon in this. I'm not saying protect the Pentagon. Go through the Pentagon as well, find the waste, cut the fat, and let's try to get this budget. I mean, I don't want to say balanced because I'm not naive, but let's just get it down a little bit.
Closer.
Get it close. Jeez.
Yeah, and I love how this was a page right out of 2025. Yes, exactly, because Project 2025 is about creating an efficient government and looking at every department.
Hey, good thing Rosie O'Donnell went to Ireland, though, okay? Because she can't take any more of this Project 2025 stuff. She really can't. Attaboy, Bill. Defund NPR. Defund NPR. Defund NPR. All right. Attaboy, Bill O'Reilly. My man. Happy Monday morning. That is great work. Hey, I mean, we're smoking them here at KCMO Talk Radio. In all categories in ratings outside of like Subaru driving woke Karens. They're the only ones who, are still listening to KCOR. But yeah, National Panhandler Radio must be defunded. They have every right to be as woke as they wish to be, but not on the taxpayer dime. That has to end, and it's got to end soon. So great job there, Bill O'Reilly. I'm a fan. I was excited hearing that one this morning. Well done.
People are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
That's exactly right. Happy Monday morning. So top story here in Kansas City that we are following today, and will be for the week most likely, is the tragic death of Kansas City fireman Graham Hoffman. Graham joined the Kansas City Fire Department in 2022, and he lost his life at the age of 29 over the weekend. And that is at the hands of, allegedly, a woman named Shanita Bassell, who they did a welfare check on. She was walking along Highway 152 highway, and she's got a laceration in her hand. They get a call. They go over there. They pick her up, and she ends up stabbing Kansas City firefighter in the chest. And Graham Hoffman is rushed to the hospital where he loses his life. And this is somebody who was just in custody up in Clay County a couple of days prior. On the 23rd of April, not even 1 week ago, this individual was arrested for allegedly biting the arm of a Kansas City police officer. She was out on bond. $10,000 bond, that's $1,000 in cash. She's back out on the streets. Within a couple of days of that, she ends up allegedly stabbing this Kansas City fireman, who now has lost his life after 2.5 years on the job and 29 years old. Now, what we need to have happen here is Local 42, the union, has got to come out emphatically against some of the crime issues that have been impacting this town for far too long. Now, this obviously is a Clay County deal. For those that want to rag on Jackson, this is not a Jackson County issue. You can't really look at anything south of the river. This person in custody, well, her issue last week was also a Clay County deal. Did not happen in Jackson. She was out in a very low bond. And now she takes the life, allegedly, of a Kansas City, Missouri fireman. Now, everything I've gathered, Local 42 is pretty left. They put out a statement yesterday that was the right statement. It was what you would expect. They say here is with profound sorrow that IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, Local 42, announces the line-of-duty death of our brother, firefighter, paramedic Graham Hoffman. Brother Hoffman began his career in the fire service with the Belton Fire Department before joining Kansas City Fire Department in September of 22. He served this community with pride, professionalism. The dangers our firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs face each time they answer a call for help are immense and often difficult to fully convey. Brother Hoffman responded with courage, honor, and selfless commitment to others. We ask that you keep firefighter, paramedic Hoffman's family, friends, and all of our brothers and sisters who serve alongside him in your thoughts during this difficult time. Of course, no prayers from Local 42. That's not their thing. They don't believe in that. His sacrifice will never be forgotten. His legacy of service will forever be honored. Funeral arrangements will be shared as they become available. It's all well and good. It's the very least they could do here, given the spot. But if Local 42 wants to actually further this beyond the niceties of a statement like that, they can. They can be much more vocal in the crime issues facing this community and how it's not just the police, but also first responders like fire and paramedics who are dealing with this stuff on a daily basis. There's obviously there's a tricky relationship here because you've got a lot of folks, the prosecutors in Jackson County are part of Local 42. Now, the Supreme Court ruled a few years ago that unions cannot force government workers to basically pay them dues. And as of a couple of years ago, a lot of the lawyers in Jackson County resigned from Local 42. So I don't know how prominent they are in the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office in particular. And once again, this is a Clay County issue, but it is something to watch. That relationship is something to watch because we know that office has obviously been derelict of duty. At least it was under Gene Peters Baker. And we hope that that starts to turn things around from here on out. 913-408-7957. I know there are many in the first responders community who are going to want to chime in on this. We will get to this coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. See, how is this at all comparable? I don't think it's comparable at all. Text line is 913-408-7957. Pete, you cannot double speak on this Kansas City firefighter tragedy. Graham Hoffman, 29 years old, getting stabbed over the weekend by basically a crazy person who they had picked up alongside 152 highway with a laceration in her finger. And she ends up allegedly stabbing Graham Hoffman, and he loses his life at 29 years old. On the text line, you cannot double speak. We tend to argue when the other side uses a tragedy to promote an agenda. You just suggested the same playbook. That's bad form. No. Hold on a second here. All right, let's pump the brakes. Pointing out the facts, and the facts of this case are that this individual who allegedly was involved in this stabbing was arrested days prior for biting the arm of a Kansas City cop, was charged with a couple of felonies, had a $10,000 bond. That's nothing. That's $1,000 you got to come up with for biting a cop weeks prior, involved in a hit and run, fleeing the scene. At some point, if you're a judge, if you're a prosecutor, you got to do your job here. And you got to say this person cannot be back out onto the streets based on what she's done over the last 2 weeks, what we've arrested her for over the last 2 weeks. You have a duty to the public at that point to do your job. That is not political. That's not me making it political. In fact, I'm calling out Clay County, which is much more politically in line than, let's say, Jackson County would be. This is not a Jackson County deal. This is a Clay County deal. So I may be calling out people that agree with me politically. It doesn't matter because they have failed the public and they failed the Kansas City, Missouri Fire Department.
Dear poli-sci sophomore, crime reduction is on the agenda. So, yeah, it's part of the agenda. Race baiting, not part of the agenda.
Well, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And trust me, this is just going to be a local crime story because it doesn't fit the puzzle pieces that would make it a national news story. Brad's in Kansas City. What's up, Brad? You're on KCMO Talk Radio.
Hi, Pete. Love your show, and thank you for taking my call this morning. I was a paramedic. I retired after 30 years. I worked in Florida in Panama City, and we brought a patient in, a psych patient, if you will. Seemed very nice and cordial and polite. We walk into the ER. She pulls out a 12-inch butcher knife and goes to town. I took it a few times, threw a nurse out of the way to save her, took it a couple more times in the back. And when you're laying there in your own pool of blood on a tile floor, reality hits you. This job is dangerous. I don't care where you work. I don't care if it's a rural community, a city. It doesn't matter. It's a dangerous job. And the directors all came out and tried to decide whether or not we should be armed. And, of course, that didn't fly, so we never were. But these folks are alone with these patients. They have no law enforcement around when they're in the back of that ambulance, and anything can happen. But to think you're out there trying to help people and this is what you get for it, that young man should have never died. Never. He's gone way too soon. And until everybody starts waking up and realizing this job is as dangerous as a police officer's job, but they have no defense but their hands. That's it. And God bless him and his family. I mean, that's horrible. And I can relate to how it feels to be a victim of a violent crime. And you look around Jackson County today, you can't walk down the street without carrying a firearm for fear of being shot. And this is, how many shootings did we have this weekend? 4?
Yeah, multiple.
It doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Yeah.
And I don't know why this is happening. I don't know why these kids out here doing this job, God bless them. I mean, they need more support. They really do.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad.
That's really
I appreciate you, man.
About it, Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Listen, you're right. And here are the numbers out of the Northland. All right. Last year at this point in time, North Patrol and Shoal Creek had a combined 3 homicides. So far this year, they have 13. They are 4x plus where they were 1 year ago. So the Northland is having a lot of issues right now.
Not new to the area. Kansas City, Kansas had issues back 20, 30 years ago. It's like one of the ambulance services would not go without getting police escorts to certain areas over in Kansas City, Kansas. So we've had issues. I don't know if it's resulted in anybody's death. This is certainly serious, but it's certainly an issue about paramedics being in danger when they go on certain calls in certain parts of this town.
And you think about this one. I mean, it seems fairly, I'm sure that folks in our first responder community have dealt with this a million times. You know, you see somebody on the side of the road, it's a welfare check, it seems harmless enough. You just don't know what they've got on them right now. You never do, but certainly at a time like this right now, where it seems like the crime is continuing to sadly increase in certain parts of Kansas City. It's down in some of the most traditionally violent parts of Kansas City. East Patrol is down to 15 homicides so far this year. That's down from 23 where it was at this point in 2022. So they've actually seen a decrease. They're down from last year. Northland's seen a big uptick in this number. And that is what is as concerning as anything else. So that's a good call, Brad. 913-408-7957, the studio line and the text line. Pete, this one is on the judge and the county. Well, we'll see. Prosecutor Zachary Thompson spoke yesterday to the media. Here's what he said.
Our office will use all legal, moral, and ethical tools at our disposal to to ensure justice for Graham, his family, and our entire community.
Well, that's good. That's great. But I still want to know how this individual ends up on the streets wandering around the Northland after biting a chunk out of a cop's arm last week on a $10,000 bond. That's still something that we need some answers to here. And, you know, I've reached out to the prosecutor's office. I did not hear back when I reached out yesterday. I'll do it again today. I do not know which prosecutor was involved, which judge at this point was involved in that decision. But it is obviously a major problem. And, you know, the Missouri system for picking these judges is kind of screwed up. I got a couple of crash courses on this over the weekend. Basically, the governor picks these people, but he gets a list of finalists from some organization. The organization can be at times, I guess, fairly woke. And that results in the governor not oftentimes having great choices. It is the classic example of selecting the tallest midget. And that's where you can't put it all on the governor for selecting some bad judges when he's given options that, frankly, all stink. And that's a big problem as well.